When it comes to my cabin build, I often get asked why I've chosen to leave gaps between the logs. Believe it or not, I have a very good reason for doing so. If you care to join me today, then grab yourself a seat while I go grab the tractor, and I'll explain everything while I work. Let's get started. First things first, before I explain my log cabin design, I have to grab a couple spare logs and bring them to the cabin site. Now onto the big question. Why are there gaps in my log cabin? Is this just a case of inferior design, or is there a method to my madness? I can assure you that it's the latter. To fill the gaps, I will use chink and daub. This style of structure is often referred to as a chinked log cabin. Now that I've gotten that out of the way, there are 3 reasons why I've decided to go with a chinked cabin design, as opposed to a scribed or seamless log cabin. The first reason is a simple one. Chinked cabins use less trees than scribed ones, approximately 8 to 12 trees less to be more specific, in some cases even more than that. Secondly, chinked log cabins are a historically tried and true design. This cabin was built in the late 1800s. Although it has been refurbished since then, the logs have stayed dry and solid for well over a century, all without any special chemicals, finishes, or treatments. As you can see, the gaps are quite large. It seems that half the cabin is logs, while the other half is chinking. Yet it has stood the test of time. This cabin isn't a one-off either. In fact, among the early pioneers of Ontario, Canada, this was the preferred way to build a log cabin. Although chinked cabins aren't exclusive to Ontario, they sure are popular here. Thirdly, I chose to build a chinked log cabin because its design naturally suits the kind of trees that are available in my area, namely eastern white cedar. Eastern white cedar is a great tree because it is naturally resistant to rot and insects. However, this species of tree does have a drawback. It has a high taper. For example, within the span of 24 feet, my cedar logs go from approximately 16 inches in diameter at the base down to 9 inches at the tip. When it comes to log cabins, this difference from end to end is almost unheard of. Highly non-uniform logs like these are difficult to seamlessly scribe together, especially when they have a 6 to 8 inch difference from one end to the other. Some thoughtful viewers have suggested that I use my sawmill to mill the logs flat on the bottom and top in order to make them uniform. But if I were to do that, I would not only waste a good portion of my logs, but I would also need to harvest a lot more trees to make up for the wastage. Not to mention, stacking logs flat against each other would trap moisture. And as we all know, moisture invites decay. Logs need to breathe, and chinking is a great way to allow for that. And finally, since my logs have a high taper, it would be impossible to properly scribe them. Here's what I mean. This log is 16.5 inches in diameter, and since I need to alternate the ends, the above log is much smaller at 9.5 inches in diameter. If I wanted to scribe the above log to fit seamlessly with the log below it, I would have to cut a 12-inch notch into it. Now, it doesn't take a mathematician to understand that those numbers don't add up. It's impossible to cut a 12-inch notch into a 9.5-inch log. That is why eastern white cedars just aren't suited for a scribed cabin design. At least, those found in my area. But cedars do work great for chinked cabins. Although I do find working with eastern cedars to be a challenge, I love the unique character that they bring to the cabin build. I think cabins with perfectly uniform logs can sometimes look a little too pristine, if you know what I mean. Which is why I enjoy the beautifully bulky and irregular hardiness that these logs will bring to the completed cabin. Are chinked cabins better or worse than other designs? I don't think so. They're just different, that's all. The best log cabin that can ever be made is one crafted as a reflection of the forest that it has grown from. That is why scribed cabins work very well in some areas, while chinked cabins thrive in others. Not better, just different. To cap the day off, my goal was to scout out 2 last trees to harvest for the season. Since it was late August, the trees wouldn't peel as well as they did in June, but I figured it could still be done with a little extra time and effort. But once September rolls around, the trees will be almost impossible to debark, and they will remain that way until next spring, which is why I had to grab the last 2 trees while I still had the chance. Once we made it back onto the main trail, we hooked the log lower down on the crossbar so that we could safely move a little faster. One log down and delivered, one to go. As I figured, the bark was a little harder to peel, but not by much.
Well, it still peels. Not great, but it still peels. Still good.
I was just glad we made it to them in time.
Here, she's it back from Charlie.
That's it for now. Until next time, my friends.